Hello everybody, this is Black here and welcome back to another Doctor Who video, in which today I'm going to be doing my top 10 Doctor Who stories of all time. For nearly 5 years now I've been making Doctor Who videos since March of 2013, and ever since then I have never done a favourite Doctor Who stories video, thanks to a private discussion with Dr. Forever about favourite stories, which in itself was inspired from TJ's top 10 classic stories video from November 2017. I've been inspired to do this. To say that this list has been difficult to construct is accurate. Placement swaps, additions, you name it. For instance, what was originally going to be number 7, the 7th placement, is now no longer on the list. Not even as an honourable mention anymore. I realised that Talons really wasn't worth being in the list at all, and only a 7 out of 10 story now, as I do find it to be quite shoddy in some areas. Looking at this list, it's half and half. Half in terms of what you would expect and half of what you would not expect. If you're an older viewer of mine, you may remember I tried to start a series called High Tier, Low Tier Classics, in which I reviewed 4 different stories, 2 of them being what I considered High Tier Classics, 2 of them what I considered to be Low Tier Classics. A video of which I uploaded all the way back in September 2013, which probably acts as a historical tease towards the updates and the Skulls General reviews nowadays. One episode was released, the second started but never finished. But the reason why I bring this up is that 2 stories from that video will appear here, so older viewers of mine may be interested to see what's on the list. To draw back to what inspired me, only 1 story from TJ's list will appear here. Enough with introductions and what have you. Here are my top 10 Doctor Who stories. So, kick-starting this list, at number 10 we have Remembrance of the Daleks. What do I really need to say about this story that hasn't been said already? Coming out the 2nd season of the 7th Doctor, Remembrance of the Daleks is a held high fan classic amongst many. During that season it was Silver Nemesis that was the 25th anniversary story, but many feel that it should have been this. Silver is a shoddy, cringy, boring mess of a Cyberman story for me, whereas this story, Remembrance, is an all-out action classic. A story that I've heard went over £13,000 in terms of budget, and it certainly paid off. From that incredible battle scene at the scrapyard in episode 1, the cliffhanger of the same episode, to Ace beating the shit out of a Dalek with a baseball bat, to the amazing special weapons Dalek, this story is a surefire classic and a good way of getting into classic Doctor Who. At number 9 we have Resurrection of the Daleks. From the 80s era of Doctor Who we had 3 stories about the Daleks, the third one of which is probably one of the most iconic stories of all time, pitting 2 different types of Daleks in battle with an epic special weapons Dalek making an equally epic and jaw-dropping appearance. Remembrance and the Daleks Master Plan are the 2 stories that I have experienced the most, with the first one of which being one of the oldest Doctor Who DVD purchases I remember. Whereas it's a great story, Resurrection tops it for me personally, and is what is the best Dalek story from the 80s for me, acting as very much a pivotal moment for the Dalek timeline, with it acting as a sequel to Destiny of the Daleks and a prequel to Revelation and Remembrance, with it first introducing us to the concept of 2 different types of Daleks fighting, which became stronger by Revelation and a reality in Remembrance, as well as the decay of Davros, which was again amplified in the next 2 stories. Resurrection is akin to the Doctor Who does the Terminator for me, with so much brutality being put on display and also how ruthless the Daleks are, an element that most stories don't really approach from what I've experienced, unfortunately. This is a Doctor Who story that I generally don't have any problems with, other than the rather rushed and somewhat abrupt companion departure at the end, although it is very emotional and realistic. At number 8 we have Spearhead from Space. Signalling the end of 60s Doctor Who and the beginning of an era that very much derives from the invasion is Spearhead from Space, the very first colour Doctor Who story, an absolutely gripping invasion of Earth story that is probably the best of its genre for me personally. Utterly incredible colour debut that I cannot recommend enough. Magnificent characters, writing and humour throughout. Absolutely phenomenal. At number 7, we have the City of Death. Comedy is something I genuinely hate in terms of how it's presented in media, as for me it takes a very particular type of approach, I guess you could say. Most of the time, execution of the comedy in media can just be fucking awful, and suicidal thoughts inducing for me, which is how and why Wonder Woman and Spider-Man Homecoming are my least favourite movies of 2017. However, City of Death manages to get it right. This combines a fascinating art theft mystery story with a wonderful sci-fi skew to it. Characters are great, writing is great, it's just a solid and wonderful comedic sci-fi story that kind of just speaks for itself really. I mean, it's a fan favourite classic for a reason. At number 6, we have Inferno. Parallel universes were a talk of sci-fi for ages, but it wasn't until the finale of the 7th season of Doctor Who that the show tackled it. Here it blends that with the ability to show the destruction of the world to great effect. Out of all of the Doctor Who stories I've experienced, arguably this is the most atmospheric, with not much music being used in the story at all, and when it is these really subtle, droney pieces of instrumentation that add to the bleakness and no hope at all mentality the story goes for. And also with these, again, really subtle pieces that sound like machinery or some type of alarm. Atmospheric brilliance aside, this is one of the darkest Doctor Who stories in existence, carried by some of the most excellent performances, writing and the cliffhangers in the show's history. And now we get on to the interesting stuff, with some unique and interesting choices. My top 5 Doctor Who stories of all time. At number 5, we have the Keeper of Dalek. Many people feel that Tom Baker's epic 7-year run started off amazingly, mainly thanks to the Philip Hinchcliffe era of the show, generating classics such as Pyramids of Mars and Terror of the Zygons, and fell off the map towards the end with duds such as Underworld and the Leisure Hive. I'd agree that the E-Space trilogy was rather uneven, starting off shit, going into mediocre, and then ending on amazing, but for me the final 2 stories in his final series as the Doctor are just gold. I don't know what it is with this story in me, but it's always just had this wonderful sense of magic to it. This fantasy 4-part story I have just always loved and adored. Characters, writing, set design, music, plot, integration of the Master and the Melker. It has always been one of my favourite Doctor Who stories ever, and a true underrated gem. It's an underrated 4-part fantasy epic that I strongly urge you to watch, as it is just brilliant in my opinion. At number 4, we have the 5 Doctors. Okay, I would agree that this story may not necessarily be the greatest story ever made. Neither is it probably the most intelligent per se from a critical standpoint, but judging it from the perspective of just being a Doctor Who fan, man oh man is it good. This is the utter embodiment of what an anniversary story should be, somewhat reuniting the first 5 incarnations of the Doctor with the additions of the Cybermen, a Dalek, a Yeti and much more. This is just one hell of an enjoyable experience. The plot uniting the famous 5, the Cybermen, the Master, the Death Zone on Gallifrey, all the different companions and the mystery of Rassilon is just brilliant in my opinion. If I ever wanted 100 minutes, if I ever wanted just 100 minutes of fun Doctor Who, I'd pop this one on, as it's just amazing for me personally. One of the earliest Doctor Who classics I ever watched as well. This Genesis of the Daleks and the Mind Robber were probably the first 3 classic stories I ever watched. So this story has been with me for a long time, and will be with me for even longer in the years to come. I just absolutely adore it. Fuck off with your Day of the Doctor bullshit. This is how you celebrate Doctor Who. At number 3, we have Logopolis. Many people lean towards the War Games as being the greatest regeneration story amongst others, but for me it is Logopolis by Christopher Hamilton Bidmead that does it for me. Quite frankly, it is baffling for me to hear people call it an anticlimactic finale to the Fourth Doctor's era, as it is just anything but in my opinion, and it is my reasoning as to why that makes it my favourite regeneration story. Logopolis doesn't do that and is very much a subtle epic like Power of the Daleks, and deals with the Master toying with the mathematical construction of the universe in an attempt to destroy it by abusing the powers of the people of and of the title planet Logopolis. This is a dark, bleak, unnerving classic that will always be one of my favourite Doctor Who stories of all time, as it is so different, so unique, and so wonderful amongst the other regeneration stories. Set design, acting, characters, writing, the mystery of the Watcher, it's all just perfect in my opinion, with it ending on what is probably my favourite music score ever to come out from a Doctor Who during the regeneration scene. At number 2 we have Turn Left. This is the absolute best new series episode in my opinion and is quite unlike anything the show has ever done, period. The episode starts off showing the Doctor and Donna very much being the tourists of this unnamed planet, very much reminiscent of a Chinese town with its rather oriental presentation. Donna then gets dragged into this attraction by this, again, an unnamed fortune teller, which then leads to an epic and dark story about the survival of humanity in a reality without the Doctor, leading to what he has stopped to ravage war and apocalypse across planet Earth, leading to the deaths of many companions and friends and even the man himself. Number 2 and number 1 are very much tied as my favourite stories, as for me personally they are things that the show has never really done before nor again. Although the Daleks Master Plan was somewhat remade with the two-parter that followed Turn Left, funnily enough. I mean, seriously, The Storm on Earth and Journey's End for me is kind of like the new series take on the Daleks Master Plan. I mean, you have the gathering of many humanoids in both. With Master it was the delegates, this is the companions. Both have a super weapon that can obliterate the universe pretty much. Both have a massive planet-sized base of operations. With Master you had Kemble, this you have the Crucible. I could go on and on and on. But distractions aside, Turn Left is very much the best of the new series for me, as I have said. Acting, writing, music is just absolutely perfect in my opinion. Watched it twice this year and I could easily watch it many more times in the coming years, and it's just the utter best if I wanted a short dark watch. This is an episode that I feel that I could just watch over and over and over again. It is so goddamn good. At number 1 we have the Daleks Master Plan. Spawning across 13 25-minute episodes in total, this story has very much been the national anthem of the past 5 years on my channel, and for good reason. No other story has gotten as ambitious or grandiose as the Daleks Master Plan, and that is why it is my favourite. Not only that, the Daleks are their absolute best. Many people lean towards Power of the Daleks as the kingpin of the Dalek stories in terms of actual depiction of the Pepper Pots, but to me it is here that they are at their absolute best. Power is a really good story, albeit slightly overrated, that shows the Daleks' manipulative and cunning side, but it is here it most aptly shows that they would literally stop at nothing to get what they want. As early as the 3rd episode, they use fucking flamethrowers to lure out the Doctor and company, risking the destruction of their base of operations. Across the 13 25-minute episodes we get many wonderful and jaw-dropping moments. To talk about my favourite episodes, I would say Mission to the Unknown, an epic 25-minute prequel that sets up the story magnificently. That is in my top 3 episodes of all time. That is in my top 3 episodes from the story for me personally. This is a harrowing, dark and disturbing episode, only matched by the 13th in this saga for its tones. Seeing the gradual destruction of this rocket crew and their futile attempts of warning humanity about the impending doom of the Daleks, with one of them eventually becoming about the impending Dalek plan, with one of them eventually becoming a Vaga plant, which becomes more and more disturbing throughout the episode. Not only that, the scene of the alien delegates and the Daleks consulting is utterly wonderful and atmospheric. An absolutely perfect opening episode to this vast saga. Believe it or not, in 2014 I listened to this singular episode on audio 10 times back to back and did not tire of it. Day of Armageddon. One of only 3 episodes surviving from this serial, and one of the very best. This is an utterly tantalising glimpse of Master Plan, and I would go as far to say it's the best existing episode of 1960s Doctor Who. From the jaw-dropping scene of the Daleks using flamethrowers and the shocked look of Brett Vion's face, to the meeting with Mavik Chen and Zephon, to that almighty delegate mating at the end, fully revealing and setting up the rest of the story, this episode is just absolutely perfect in my opinion. I have watched this episode on its own 40 times at least, and I could just watch it over and over and over again. The destruction of time. The 13th and final episode to this almighty saga is what is probably the greatest episode of Doctor Who in the history of over 800 installments, and holy shit is it dark. An episode that leaves you with your mouth hanging for me, with how shockingly dark it is, and such an emotional gut punch of an end that is capped off amazingly by the quote-unquote "what a terrible waste" conversation by the Doctor and Stephen. Fun fact, this episode got edited prior to transmission because parts of a death sequence in it were deemed too dark for transmission. Overall, this is a Doctor Who story that is just the absolute best in my opinion. Okay, it has its problems, and it may not be the most perfect Doctor Who story ever, but for me it more than deserves to be at number 1. And there we go, that was my top 10 Doctor Who stories of all time. What are your favourite stories of all time? Do you agree or disagree with my picks? Do you stand with me on Logopolis, or do you walk with the Keeper of Dalek? Let me know, and thank you very much for watching.